Weizenbier. Happy New Year and happy Wednesday for those of you that celebrate Brew Day Wednesdays. I don't really do a Brew Day Wednesday thing, but I try and get out here every week that I can. Bottled the blonde ale last week, and should be able to crack one of these open next week and actually talk about it. But today I wanted to really talk about Brewers Best Witbier, and this is their kit number 1051, and it's considered one of their premium recipes. They list it as an intermediate difficulty for brewing because it's their version of a partial mash brew process. Their description is that it's a classic white ale with a wheat, barley, orange peel, and coriander. Spicy, fruity, refreshing beer with a dry finish. So we'll see when we get done with it how it really is. So I thought what I'd do is I went through the process yesterday, and it actually went pretty well. I thought I'd show the steps on the bottom of the screen if possible, and just kind of talk through what was different about it and how it went. What really makes the brewing process different compared to some of their other kits is that you're really doing a partial mash with the process and with everything they include in the kit, which is a pound of pale malt, a half pound of oats, and a half pound of wheat. And while a mash tun might have made it a little bit easier or maybe a little more stable, at least that's what I was thinking when I was going through it, it really was pretty easy to do with just an extra pot on the stove. So what you do simply is just get the water up to 155 degrees, and then you put the grains, which are in a bag, into the water, and of course that's going to drop the temperature a little bit, so you want to be vigilant about watching that. And then you want to make sure that you get the water to 148 to 152, somewhere in there, but you definitely don't want to go over 155 with the grains. And then that step basically goes on for 45 minutes. Of course, like all the recipes I have, I convert that to an Excel spreadsheet, and then I actually watch the steps as they proceed, so I know exactly what the timing is of everything that I need to do. Of course, you don't need to do that, as I mentioned before. You can do it any way you want that makes sense to you, but for me it's just easier. So once the 45 minutes was over, I actually spurged the grains in the bag over the pot to try and get out as much sugar as I could. And I actually tasted it at this point, and it was actually quite sweet, so I must have done a fair amount of a good job getting everything to come together. And then it's really just transferring the wort over into your kettle, and in my case adding enough water to get up to 5 gallons. So once the water was boiling, then I added they have 1 jar of liquid malt extract. I added that to the brew, and then I boiled that for another 40 minutes. I added the wort chiller when there was 20 minutes left in the brew, and 2 bags of dry malt extract needed to be added. And at that point I actually added the spice pack as well, which I put into basically a steeping bag because I didn't want the grains going around and plugging up the filter, the little seeds. So I tied that off to the handle of the brew pot. And after 5 minutes of boiling, then I added the flavoring hops. And then another 10 minutes of boiling, it was really time to turn on the wort chiller and then get ready to dump everything down into the fermentation bucket. Once I got everything into the fermentation pail, of course I did my hydrometer reading, and then I went ahead and aerated the wort for 50 seconds, which has worked out really good for me. It's really sped things up. Then it's mainly just throwing the airlock on, the lid and the airlock on, and you're all done. Thoughts about this particular brew: add about 45 minutes on to your usual brew schedule if you're using a kit that's, liquid malt extract only, or maybe some steeping grains for a short period of time. And then again, you just have to be real vigilant with the temperature and watch it. I kept a thermometer in the pot so that I was always able to look over at it and make sure that there wasn't any sort of deviation taking place that was going to affect the grains. It was a very interesting smell, I have to say, after the spice pack was put in and it boiled for about 10 minutes. It had a smell. I thought it was kind of a cinnamon orange smell. I'm sure it's just the orange peel and coriander, but And it did, and I would say that it did have kind of a spicy smell to it. So I'm going to be real interested in how that turns out, and we'll be looking at that one, I guess, about a month from now. So next up is really bottling the Witbier, probably this weekend or early next week. I still have to rack off the Hefeweizen to a secondary, which is probably going to happen today. It's been, I think it's about long enough, and I can probably rack it over to the secondary, and we'll be in good shape. And then next week we'll talk about the blonde ale and whether that really met expectations or not. I have to say I did taste it when I was bottling, and it was good. So hopefully it gets better. So until next week, cheers. Awesome beer. This has been a Matty Boy presentation. Say bye-bye, Matty. Bye-bye.